Alright, as you can see, winter fully set in now, and there has been absolutely zero wind for the past 3 weeks. My last session was actually the one where I was in Büsum. It's the second to last video in my channel if you want to have a look at that. But anyway, I thought I would do a little recap of my gear and explain to you why I use certain gear in certain conditions and how I set it up in this series. So let's start off with the Fanatic Falcon 80, which you can see behind me, because this has actually been my favorite board this season. So let's first talk about how this Fanatic Falcon 80 actually fits into the Falcon range, because it is kind of a strange size. So you have the Falcon 97 and the Falcon 90, and those two boards are really the high wind slalom options in the Fanatic Falcon range. The 97 is more for heavier riders, like the PWA guys who are above 90 kilograms. They use this board in high wind, and the 90 liter is more for the lighter guys who use this board also in very strong wind, but are maybe below 80 kilograms. So I think the Falcon 80 is more of an intermediate board that fits in between the high wind slalom boards and the speed boards, in my opinion. I personally have been looking for around 2 years for a board like this, because it fits one kind of conditions really well, and that is speed surfing in very hardcore conditions. So you have some wind, you have strong wind, but it's not super flat. You have some chop, and this is where this board really shines and accelerates. So a speed board in perfect conditions that are flat water and consistent wind will usually be faster than a slalom board. However, if you have like more hardcore conditions with more chop, this board performs really well. And I think the reason for that is that you have a lot of volume in the tail. The board is 56 centimeters wide, which is 4 centimeters narrower than the 90 liter, I think. So it will go faster as it's not so wide, but it still has a lot of volume in the back of the board, in the tail of the board. And this really helps you to keep control on a choppy speed course. And talking about control, I actually use 2 different fins with this board for more hardcore conditions. And when I have a little bit of chop, I use this 30 centimeter slalom fin by Fanatic, which is my fin sponsor. And this fin works really well with the board as it gives a lot of lift. It makes the board ride really freely, so it's the perfect fin if you have a little bit more difficult conditions. In these conditions I prefer a slalom fin with this board. And if you have more flat water and a little bit easier conditions, the 30 centimeter slalom fin actually gives a lot of lift, and it becomes a little bit hard to keep the board down. So if I have really good speed conditions with this 80 liter board, I actually use, oh, it's still dirty. I actually use this 26 centimeter asymmetrical speed fin, and this is better on a flat course. It will give you a little bit more speed, but if it's really choppy, I would use the slalom fin as it's longer. And when you go from chop to chop, it's better to use a little bit longer fin, as it will give the board more control. Because obviously more of the fin is still inside the water with a longer fin compared to a speed fin, which are usually smaller, like this 26 to 30 centimeters. And also what I love to do with this board is jibing. As I've said, it has a lot of volume in the tail, so you can make some really nice jibes with it. In speed surfing we have this discipline called the Alpha 500, which measures the speed over a jibe. So basically you go downwind 250 meters, you make a jibe, and you go back 250 meters and have to finish within 50 meters of the point where you started, so you cannot go too downwind. And this is a really nice way to measure your speed on your jibes and how fast you accelerate out of the jibes. And with this board I got my personal best on the jibe with I think 25 or 26 knots on the Alpha Racing. So it's a perfect board for jibing, as it still has enough volume compared to the speed boards, but you can really turn it around quickly. You can make steep jibes, so it's really fun. I love it for that. And for me, I use this board with a 5.5, a 6.2 and a 7.0. And my favorite sail with this board is actually the 6.2. With that it rides like a dream. I really like this combination, so 6.2 with an 80 board and 30 centimeter fin. As for the foot strap positions, I like to put them a little bit further apart from each other on this board. And the reason for that is, as I said previously, I like to use this board when it gets really choppy and rough. And in these conditions I think it's better if your feet are not too narrow, but a little bit further apart from one another, so that you have a little bit more leverage on the board. So when the front of the board starts flying, if you have the feet a little bit further apart, you can push with the front foot and get the board down better than when they are really close together. So yeah, with this board I actually did the German lake record. Like, it's the fastest session on a German lake anyone has ever done, and I did it with this board, which I think is pretty awesome. I got 40 knots average on the 5x10 second ranking and over 42 knots on the top speed. And for these kind of conditions, when you have a lake that's still a little bit choppy, but you have strong wind, and yeah, for that it was really perfect. Anyway guys, that's it for this first part of my gear series, let's call it that. So let me know what you want to see next. Maybe I can cover a foil or another board, whatever you're interested in, and I will go over it. So until then, see you next time guys, and have a nice holiday.